Hello, it is Zoolytic, back again with another album tier list ranking, of course. This year I listened to a little bit more albums, about 75 or so, compared to my last year. The number slips in my head, but it certainly was much less than this. I believe I only had like 2 or 3 rows to go through that time, so a little bit more productive of a year. This year in terms of new music. Of course, the rows here. So S rank is albums that I personally really loved. They blew me away. I will add them to my regular listening rotation of albums that I would like to listen to. A is really solid. B, the rows are pretty self-explanatory. I will say though that I'll try to keep it as objective as I can, but for a lot of these, especially as we get to the very high or lower ends, it's always just like, I personally just don't really enjoy this album, or I personally really just love this album, even if you don't. And the not my cup of tea is for albums that it was maybe something new I was trying to listen to, or something that I don't usually listen to a whole lot of, kind of a new genre, usually, or a new artist, with like a distinct style, and I don't personally think it's like bad. It's mainly just for stuff that I don't really feel like I can rank. So for example, a lot of the times I'll put, like, if I listened to any video game soundtracks this year, or movie soundtracks, or whatever, usually I'll put those there, because you can't really rank those compared to these. Actually, wait, I might as well just add a new rank below for stuff like video game OSTs, where it's not really fair to rank them, because there's not really a way to rank those. I don't think I'll have any of those this year, but might just be a nice tier to have going forward. So unrankable albums I can't really fairly rank to other more traditional albums, from like bands and musicians, as opposed to like video games and stuff. Not my cup of tea is for stuff that I was kind of trying out new things, and I just kind of figured, well, it's not bad, it's just, not something that's up my alley. And then the other ranks are self-explanatory. So for example, the difference between an album in D tier and not my cup of tea is I expected, or like, I usually enjoy songs in this genre, or I enjoy albums in this genre, and it just wasn't very good. As opposed to, this is a new genre or a new artist, and I'm just not my cup of tea. Now, with that being said, the first thing we should probably start off with is, well, if you remember from my last year, I listened to the discography of the late 70s to kind of, even to modern day, but mainly through the late 70s to kind of early 90s, Japanese jazz fusion group Cassiopeia. And I got through a good bit of their albums last year, before the end of that year, but I was kind of listening to them through that December to January period, so the ones that didn't make the cut for my last year's tier list, that I ended up listening over the course of like January to February, I have those here. And there's just a ton of them, so I think it's nice if we just would do a Cassiopeia speed round as we did last year. So, okay, so a little jump cut there. The first thing that I want to do as we go through these is to clear out all of the unrankables here, because Cassiopeia, as we know, is, as I talked, is they have a lot of albums that are just like live albums, or live albums, or like compilation albums, or just like, for example, all these guitar and bass ones are just like, they took the songs from an album they already made and then just focused heavily on that guitar section, or that bass section of that. So all of these go to the unrankable. Doesn't mean they're not worth listening to. They still are, especially if you're more interested in, like, I guess, like learning guitar, or kind of hearing kind of how they did the things that they did on those songs. But I just want to make this clear, because I think a lot of people might get confused, is a lot of Cassiopeia's albums are technically live albums. Like, a lot of them were performed in front of a crowd. Mint Jams is one of them. But there's a difference between a live album that actually has, like, new and interesting kind of, like, I guess, takes on the music, or it introduces new songs, like Mint, or it introduces new songs, or has a unique twist on them, and then just like, yep, we just played a lot of the songs from albums we already made. If that kind of makes sense. I hope I'm making myself clear on that. So, for example, looking through here, something like Marble, which I'll just give its ranking now. Marble has a lot of unique things for Cassiopeia. Like, for example, it starts out with a 25-minute long song, and then kind of goes into a more traditional Cassiopeia kind of format from there. And it is live, I believe. No, it's been a while since I've heard some of these albums. A lot of these are from the beginning of the year, so my memory on them is a little more hazy, but I believe it's also a live album. And the difference between this and for something like Gig 25 here is Gig 25 is just straight up a live album. All the songs there are stuff that you've genuinely just heard before. But Marble, it has some unique stuff it brings to the table. I don't necessarily think it achieves what it tries to set out to do. I think the 25-minute long song is not worth it and to listen to. I don't think it's worth it as a long song, and even if you're just trying to listen to it more like traditionally, like on like your like radio or your aux, I guess it's not. There is no use case outside of like long drives, unless you're like commuting to work for like half an hour. There's never a chance you're going to be able to fully properly listen to this song in its entirety. I had the same issue with like a Death Grips like EP, where like the entire EP is just one song that is like 22 minutes, and the issue is the song has to be worth it, first of all, to be that long. Like, it has to be good, it has to be dynamic, it has to change as the song goes on, and it has to be engaging. I haven't listened to the Death Grips EP, maybe I'll do that at some point, but in terms of specifically here with Marble, with Cassiopeia's Marble in Universe, I believe this is a song called, it's not worth it. Cassiopeia makes good music, but it doesn't make music good enough to last for a 25-minute song, I think, or it doesn't vary itself enough, in my opinion, in unique ways to make it worth it. And that's kind of a big thing that takes the album down, because the rest of it is also just kind of mid in compared to the rest of Cassiopeia's discography. So, kind of a little tangent there for Marble, but I'm going to put it in a C tier, because I still quite heavily enjoy Cassiopeia's music style, and I'm like pretty confident that any Cassiopeia album, even the ones that I would put in D tier, are still worth listening to at some point. But I don't know. It's I'll move it to D tier, because that 25-minute song is going to be at the beginning, and you're not going to want to get through all of it. You're going to want to not do that. So I already moved Gig to live. Just continuing on. Best live selections, Groove and Passion Live is also obviously a live album. Same thing with 20th here. Another live album. Excuse me. But the rest of these, just taking a double check here while I'm We Want More is another live EP. And of course we got all the guitar ones out of here. And then the rest of these are not live albums, or if they are, they're distinct enough to be kind of viewed as their own album experience. And I believe right now, so I'm just kind of going to fly through these based on which ones I remember more recently or remember my feelings about. Oh, this one's also live, made in Melbourne. About which ones I feel the most strongest about, and right off the gate right now is an A tier. It is snappy, it's fast, it's modern, because I believe this is technically Cassiopeia Plus, which is what I mentioned in the first video, with like the original two members are the only ones that are left in the band, and I believe the other two are much younger faces to the Cassiopeia band, and they kind of bring a more modern twist to it, and it is in your face, it is jazzy, it is upbeat. Oh, it gets you in a mood of you are sitting in a nice little, like, it's a nice day out, you're walking around, you're like going to the malls and stuff like that. I don't know, it's a very good vibe, or like a night out on the town, a little more classy, obviously, because it's jazz. It's not, it's not like rap or anything, which I mean, not that rap isn't classy, but it's more like, the atmosphere of rap that it tries to convey isn't necessarily what one would consider classy or sophisticated, as jazz would. But right now in A tier because it's so fucking good. Places is even better. Places, I believe, I don't know the full history, and I might be making this up, but Places, I believe, was Cassiopeia going to different places, obviously, in their tours, and making songs based on that. Like, for example, like, all the names are kind of like Rare One in New York City, Windy City, Tokyo Sunset. I mean, there's a few that are like Gazebo or whatever, but this is a great album. The songs, almost all of them, they have the same Cassiopeia soul, but they sound so distinct from one another. And you listen through this album, you feel like you're on a journey, and it is absolutely amazing. This is joining Mint Jams and Eyes in the Mind, or Eyes on the Mind, as probably one of my favorite Cassiopeia albums. It's very, very strong. I quite enjoyed it. Then moving on here, another one that I also quite enjoyed, but not to the same extent as these other ones, is, let me find the name here, was Living on a Feeling, Cassiopeia Night Selection. So this album here has a really trippy cover art. I'm not sure if it's meant to be like an illusion or if it's meant to be like the phases of the moon, I think. But this album is really solid. It's not as good as Right Now or Places, but you listen to it, and obviously it's a night selection, so it's a little more, I guess, subdued, so to speak. But it's a very tranquil vibe. You can throw this on in the background and it'll guide you through, and it's almost like good focus music. It's so good. Now the rest of these, let me move these onto their own tier here, just so I can speak about them a little more clearly without causing any confusion from the ones I've already ranked. So a lot of these admittedly are going to end up here in C tier because Cassiopeia has way too big of a discography without a diverse enough track list to really make all these albums be A tiers or to be, B tiers or S tiers or whatever. So a lot of them are admittedly going to end up in here, and for a lot of them, there's not really much of a reason for me to spend much time on them, like describing them. So for example, I believe this is one with the leg on the cover, is named The Party. So some of these are a little more jazz, all of it's jazzy. Some of them are a little more kind of more for a party setting. They're a little more upbeat, a little more fast-paced, kind of getting you in the more dancing mood, I guess, so to speak, rather than the jazzy mood, whatever that is. Best way I can describe it. But The Party's good. Kind of speed through here. So for the next one, we're going to stick with Asian Dreamer. So Asian Dreamer is also a B tier. This one's one of their more modern albums. I'm not sure what the band formation would have been like at this time, but it's a longer Cassiopeia album. Like, it has a lot of songs on it, but it's also it's a good mixture. There's a lot of stuff in there that feels traditional. Like, there's a lot of songs that are the classic, I guess, Cassiopeia staples you kind of expect, but they have a unique twist on them. Compared to the rest of the discography, it's another very upbeat album. This is Asian Dreamer. I think I forgot to mention that. Very distinct vibe to them. It's a very upbeat, very happy album, which is kind of another benefit to it. Again, it's really hard because a lot of these, like for example, Active has a ton of songs that are just same songs from previous albums. It's not a live album, but it's just like they're good songs, and this is how I feel for like another one, like other ones. For example, sorry for all the delays here. A lot of these albums I have to go back and kind of re-listen to some of their tracks because, well, to be honest, a lot of these are from the beginning of the year, and on top of that, Cassiopeia just has so many albums, and a lot of them really do tend to have a lot of tracks that sound really similar. But coming back around here, I have to say that Hardy Notes is a lot more interesting than I remember. There's a lot more flamenco and piano focus in this one. So it distinguishes itself a lot more from Cassiopeia's discography, because a lot of Cassiopeia's focus tends to have a big guitar presence. And a lot of drums as well. So having piano and flamenco kind of switch things up really helps breathe a freshness into the album that you tend to want with Cassiopeia. Answers is kind of a more traditional Cassiopeia experience. There's nothing inherently bad about it, but there's nothing inherently like amazing about it either. Same with Aspire, where again it's just like nothing you haven't heard before, and they don't really do much different with it. Same thing with with Inspire. My bad. Active is the one I got the name mixed up on. Where these three albums is just like, yep, that's Cassiopeia. That's exactly what you'd call a Cassiopeia album, but it's not exactly one that's going to be having you jump out of your seat. Bittersweet's kind of the same thing with Hearty Notes, where there's a big focus on different instrumentation, or I guess kind of unique formats for the instrumentation. It still uses a lot of the similar instruments like guitar, guitar, bass, drums, and stuff. But I think they do enough with it here to make it feel distinct from something like the original Cassiopeia, the self-titled, the titular one. Excuse me. Moving on here. So, Flowers, Miracles, I believe. Freshness. Flowers, Freshness, and then Material. These three are more modern Cassiopeia entries. Probably from when the band was not down to just two members, but I don't think it's going to be kind of the same as Cassiopeia P4, where they have like two really young members. But these are basically like really modern, like materials from like 2017 or something. And they do have like new music in them. It's actually like new songs and stuff like that you haven't heard before. But it feels very early Cassiopeia coded, where like they sound pretty similar to things you would hear from that era. And I just personally think that the songs from that era are a little better than what gets offered in these ones. But even then, they're still not like they're still on Miracle or Marble, I should say. Like they're still good. They're still bring fresh stuff, but they're not cracking into B tier, I'd say. I don't really have much of a reason to return back to them. Same thing with Full Colors here. This one's from kind of the era of like Inspire and stuff like that, where it's kind of Inspire and like Bittersweet, where it's kind of like post first breakup, I think, in their second era. And it again just doesn't really do much. Same thing with B here. That is what it's named, BE. These two just kind of, they sound pretty similar. They reuse some songs in them as well. Then it's just like they're not really giving me a reason to come back. Main Gate, however, is better. It's not too different, I should say. Like, don't go into this expecting anything eye-popping or crazy, but I just think the song selection's a little better. The mixing, like the ordering of the songs, is pretty good, and I think it's it also has like a good amount of new stuff in it as well. I think it's just a pretty solid B tier entry. And with that is officially Cassiopeia ranked, I should say. Their I guess a little spiel here before I move on is, it was interesting. I would not recommend listening to Cassiopeia's entire discography. It's not worth it. Too many of their albums sound similar, and they run together too much to actually be properly a good experience to listen through. And eventually, you're just going to end up hating it more than you enjoy it. Now, obviously, I still enjoy a lot of Cassiopeia's music. It's just like the experience of listening to 38 or so albums back to back to back, with like only like maybe a couple albums of a break between them was not very good, and probably wasn't the best way to experience them. But I'm done with it, and this is my overall ranking of kind of the second half of Cassiopeia, so to speak. Because a lot of those first albums I ranked were Excuse me. A lot of those first albums I ranked were kind of their first iteration of the band. So, now that we're done with Cassiopeia, let's break into non-Cassiopeia, more of the actual meat and potatoes of the tier list here. So the first album I actually listened to this year was Hurry Up Tomorrow by The Weeknd. So, this album is his most recent one, obviously. It's the first one after Dawn FM, which was an amazing album. That was really good. It created a great atmosphere, and it's part of the trilogy. You have After Hours, you have then into Dawn FM, and then he was hyping up. He was like, the album after this is going to finish the trilogy. It's going to finish it. It's going to be the end of the story. And I think this album, as most people would probably say, is a bit too long for its own good. Now the songs on the album are quite good. I think there's a lot of good music in here. That intro song, that synth in your face intro is heavenly. It is a great start to the album, and the album keeps that kind of atmosphere of this like I guess kind of tangent, but it relates. So the kind of the story from the album that I got when I listened to it is that he kind of, I guess, essentially OD'd on his tour. And that's what After Hours and Dawn FM was After Hours was him, stumbling and, was falling down. And then Dawn FM was basically his life flashing before his eyes. And then obviously when you think about that, Dawn FM is purgatory. That's how it's been described. So the thought is either, hurry up, the third album would be like heaven or hell or something, but instead it seems like it's almost walking it back, where it's like, it's more like he's returning and with a new fresh mindset on his life going forward, which I guess kind of makes sense, because I think The Weeknd's kind of had a character shift post this album, where he's kind of less he's always been, he hasn't been the same, obviously he's not the same artist he was as Trilogy, but he's kind of had this atmosphere of this kind of almost like R&B dark fuckboy type of thing going on, and it seems like he's kind of starting to change that a bit since this album came out, which I guess kind of makes sense in the lines. But either way, this album is very long. It has a lot of good songs on it, but it is a very exhausting listen through, especially because I'm a little more forgiving to it than I know some of my friends who are Weeknd fans are. And especially and I like a lot more of the songs in here than they do. So for me, it's a little more bearable because there's a lot of songs that I like, and so it can kind of keep me going. Even, by the time you get to the second half of the album, like Big Sleep and stuff like that, you're almost wanting it to just be over already, even if you like the songs coming forward. And so it's hard to say this album is actually very particularly like good, because it's wearing out the viewer before they even get to all the songs. And if anything, most of the time you're just going to listen to the songs from the album rather than the album itself, which I don't think is a very good sign. And so overall, I'd say that's kind of where it falls in the C tier, which is unfortunate because I was really looking forward to this. Dawn FM was a phenomenal album with only a handful of misses, I'd say, on it. And it really did a great job kind of setting the stage for this album to come in and just kind of blow our socks off. And I don't think it accomplished that. I think it's a solid lineup of songs. I just think it's too long, and I don't think it's mixed very well to particularly justify its length or to help you try and get through how long it is. Next album I listened to was Music, or I Am Music, by Playboi Carti. So my experience with Playboi Carti is I quite like his first two albums. I think the first one was self-titled. Let me double check. I might be fucking that. Yeah, self-titled, and then Die Lit, and then of course Whole Lotta Red is an album that exists, and I don't necessarily hate Whole Lotta Red. I'm not a huge lover of Whole Lotta Red either, though. I think it's fine. Die Lit, I think, is my personal favorite of his. So, and then I hadn't listened to it for a while when I listened to I Am Music, and I have to say, it's better than when I first listened to it, because I re-listened to it recently in preparation for this tier list, and I have to say it's Is it rude to say I'm not? I don't really like his old voice, which is really rude to say because of course he's not gonna be able to do the same kind of baby voice he could do on his older albums. But it kind of just felt like a completely different kind of tone shift for him as an artist, and I don't know if I really fucked with it that much. But that aside, I mean, I still think the songs are pretty solid on it. There's a few that I quite like. I like the Kendrick features. I think he does that, and I always think Travis Scott does a great job when he's featured, usually. And I think there's some pretty funny moments, like whenever he has like I think it was a feature, or maybe just like some guy ad-lib kind of talking about how, you're making a new genre of music, Playboi Carti. I thought that was pretty funny. The actual atmosphere of the album is really good. Like if you're like at a party or something and you throw this on, that's pretty. It's gonna make that party a little better, or it's gonna set the vibe, of course, of that party, which is really good. And I think it seems like that's kind of what the point of the album was to an extent. An hour and 16 minutes makes it like 6 minutes shy of the Hurry Up Tomorrow, and I also don't think it needs to be this long. Now, granted, there's a lot of songs in here that are like a minute 30 or something, so the track count looks a lot longer than looks like it bloats it, but it's actually just like, if you're listening to this album by itself, like just focusing solely on it, at a certain point you're just going to want it to end. I think you're going to be like, I'm satisfied, I got the Playboi Carti experience that I was hoping for. And I think, at least comparing it to his previous albums, I think it falls a bit short. And I don't think there's enough good songs compared to just mid to bad songs on it to really hold it any higher. It's kind of a similar story to Hurry Up Tomorrow, where it's just like, please stop making albums this long. I would much rather have like these broken up into two separate albums rather than just having them be one ginormous album. Even if most of the time I'm only going to be listening to like the few songs off of it, just as an album, they're just so fucking long. Next up is Like Clockwork by Queens of the Stone Age. Now, my experience with Queens of the Stone Age is literally only songs for the deaf. And I have to say that album was fucking phenomenal. S tier, easy one. I still listen to that song pretty consistently. It's so good. Like Clockwork is pretty solid. I'm going to leave it in B tier. Spoiler alert, that's the rank that's getting. I'm putting it in B tier. Because, well, I think the songs on it are pretty solid. Obviously you have classics like My God Is the Sun. I quite like Fairweather Friends. I quite like Fairweather Friends, but I just think it bounces all over the place. Like you'll get into the songs for the deaf started out with a bang and then kept that motion going, and then it kind of slowed down as the album went on. So you're kind of riding. You started out with a bang and then rode it down for the rest of it. This one just bounces back between high and low, high and low, high and low. Like it starts out pretty slow and then it goes into a little bit more of a faster song, and then it instantly jumps down to a slow song, and then back and forth, and then the end of the album kind of goes back into that high octane for the end before the final song. And it's just like, can we get a mix? Can we get like a more of a consistent vibe, or at least more of a shift, right? It's just jumping back and forth between the two tones, and or between the two kind of speeds, and it's whiplash. It's like a roller coaster, and I'm not really a big fan of that. I wish the layout of songs was a bit different, so that way it didn't feel as much of a roller coaster, because I think it could be a really solid album aside from that. Also, I just don't think the songs are as good as the ones on Songs for the Deaf. I think they're pretty good, but they're not like God Is in the Radio and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. It's pretty good. That's basically what B is pretty good if you look at the albums in it. And then C is just like, it's okay. And then D is like, it's not worth it or it's not good. Next up was Her Loss by Drake and 21 Savage, a little collab album. This is actually really good. I'm not a major Drake fan for a variety of reasons, but I think that they work really well on this album. There's a lot, and the beats. I don't know who produced this album. It was probably a bunch of different people who produced it, but the beats on this album go crazy. Like they got some great beat switches and stuff like that. Obviously, it starts out with a song "Rich Flex" on BS. Oh my goodness. Privileged rappers, and then it just keeps that atmosphere going. And then, dude, some of like Broke Boys, the beat switch on Broke Boys is just absolutely crazy. I love it. I'm gonna put it in A. It's a really good album. Of course, and actually, it showed me like a lot of the reason why people like Drake. I know some people might say he wasn't that strong in the album. I think he has a lot of good stuff on there. And then of course, I'm a big 21 fan. I love 21's flow. I know he raps. I know he kind of raps the same things in every song, but I don't know, man. He's good at what he does. Okay. It really showed me like a lot of the strengths people have for why Drake is like, one of the ones they really like, one of the rappers that they really like. So I don't know if it hasn't like converted me over to being a Drake fan, but I must say I can't deny that he was pretty good on it. And same with 21. So it's going in A tier. This is a good album. I'd recommend if you haven't listened to 21 or Drake. Not necessarily that this is like the best intro song to either of them, but I think it's a good experience, and it might get you more interested in their other music. So definitely worth a listen. Next is the EP Great Soul by Great Soul, titular EP. This is really weird. I should ask the person who recommended me this who these people are, because it's because the EPs itself is from 2012, but it sounds like it's from like 90s. Almost kind of the song. It's almost like kind of a rock. It's a rock EP. It's kind of like more of a softer rock, I'd say, as opposed to soft rock. Maybe even like a slight bit of like kind of like almost like AC/DC type thing. Kind of like more rock, but it's not like they sing like it or even it sounds near it. There's some flavor of it in there. So, but they also, like, I can't find any info on them when I Google them or anything like that. They have one monthly listener, and that's probably me. That's probably me on Spotify. And this other person. So I have no information about who these people are. There's only 4 songs on this EP, but I have to say, it's a good time. It's hard to rank it very high because it's like, it's so short, and it's not like the songs themselves are like, crazy or anything, but it's a very solid, rock EP, only 4 songs, really quick listen through. The atmosphere is very, kind of like live, almost like it was recorded live. It feels kind of, like homemade, which is, probably is, given how seemingly obscure it is, but it's a really solid listen, and I definitely would recommend checking it out. Maybe you'll like a few, maybe you'll like 1 or 2 of the songs on the 4-song EP, and yeah, especially if you find more information about it, or if I end up finding more information about it, I'll definitely try and put it in the comments at least, so we can know more about this. Maybe it's like a local band that they know of or something. Who knows? Next is What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. I think this is not my cup of tea. Kind of that soulful, more, I guess, gospel type of aesthetic. I liked some of the songs off of it, but it just kind of seems like it's type of music that isn't for me, really. There's not much really to say on that besides just it's not my type of music. Marvin Gaye's a legendary artist. Everyone has probably heard about him at one point or another and probably heard some of his songs, but I don't know. I think I'm okay with just hearing only songs of Marvin Gaye and not really listening to another album of his, because it's not really something that struck me a whole lot, but I don't think it's a bad album necessarily. Now the next album on the list is Amnesiac by Radiohead, and I have to say I'm pretty disappointed. Now, it's not a bad album, but it's so forgettable. Like, I literally just listened to it recently, and I've already forgotten how I feel about it. Like, it's not something that it's kind of in this in C tier. It's not like bad, but it's just like I don't really particularly feel too strongly about it one way or another. The atmosphere is not as strong as Kid A, which is the album it was kind of like, I wouldn't say made in tandem with, but that basically was. And there's a few songs I like on it, but overall I'd say it's just kind of a not boring, but it's just kind of a mediocre listen through, and one that I'm definitely not going to remember much longer afterwards. So I mean, I'm sorry to all the Radiohead fans out there. I mean, I would consider myself a Radiohead fan, not a particularly passionate or strong one, but still a Radiohead fan. And I'm just so surprised at how just okay this album was. Next up is Alternative Trap by Lucky. So this is for the one person who kept telling me to listen to Lucky, and I have to say, it's better than his other albums. It's his first album actually that he was able to get out, but I maybe I'm just not a fan of his style, because he's not. This album is again better than the other ones, and so I might put it in C tier. So it might be his best album, at least of the ones I've listened to so far. But I don't fuck with him, man. He's not very engaging to listen to. His beats aren't super crazy. His flow is not very ear catching, attention grabbing. It's more melodic. It's more. He's much chiller, I guess, on this album, which kind of gives it its own kind of feel. But it's not. It doesn't wow me, and I don't think it's ever gonna wow me, because he's okay. You know, he doesn't have any like crazy beat switches. He doesn't like rapping or anything too crazy. He has like the outro is pretty funny, where he's like talking about how it's his first album and like doing an outro on it and stuff like that. But you know, it's got its own charm because it's his first one, and you can tell he's like really excited about it, and you can tell he's like really proud of what he's done with it, which I kind of that adds points in my book. I always appreciate when you can feel the passion behind an album, or the passion that an artist put into it. I think that can give brownie points to me personally. But in terms of like the actual like content of it, you'll throw it on, and then your mind is just gonna not focus on it basically at all. Or if it is, I mean, you'll do some slight head nodding with the melodic kind of slower beats on this. But overall, I mean, it's nothing really to write home about. The next album I listened to, well, more of an EP, was Untitled Unmastered by Kendrick Lamar. I skipped this one when I was doing my initial Kendrick Lamar full discog listen, because I felt like it was a B-sides compilation, not really something I needed to listen to, because I was mainly here for the canon Kendrick experience, I guess, so to speak. So I skipped it, and then I never went back to it until this year. And I have to say, it's pretty solid. And this could be because I'm biased, because I like Kendrick's flow. I really enjoy the passion that he puts into his projects a lot of the time, that you can feel. And because I just think, I think he's a pretty good artist. But but for this, it's also like they're meant to be just like songs that never made it on to Pimp a Butterfly, and like they're kind of a little more rough around the edges. They're not mixed as quality, so to speak. But it's pretty fun. A lot of the songs on there are solid. They're good. They're good experiences. It's hard to say it's like an A rank. Like it's a pretty solid kind of B-sides EP, so to speak. And you can find some songs on it that are pretty fun, like Untitled 01, the first track, which again I get why they're all named Untitled. It's still kind of lame, I'd say, but I like that they include the date that they were made. That's pretty neat in the track name. But other than that, I mean, not much to say about it besides just a pretty solid B-sides EP. And if you're interested in more Kendrick content, or if you haven't listened to it in a while, I'd say give it another listen through if you're a Kendrick fan, because it's got some charm. It's got charm, and the context of knowing that this is like unreleased stuff technically, or stuff that wasn't released for stuff that didn't make the cut to TPAB is always pretty interesting, I think, in a lot of these instances. Next album I listened to was In Rainbows by Radiohead. Now this one I like a lot better than Amnesiac. I'd probably say A tier. I don't like it as much as Kid A. but I think it's really solid. I like what they did with it. You know, I like how varied the track listing is here. And it's not too long either. Well, actually, wait, I might be tripping. It's 42 minutes, about this average album length. I'm not really sure what the message behind it is, and I'm sure if I like looked into it, I could figure out what the message was. But I quite enjoyed what they did on the album. I like a lot of the songs off. I like Weird Fishes / Arpeggi. I like House of Cards and stuff like that. It's just a very solid album. It's got a lot of good tracks to it. I move it up to A because because as opposed to these albums, it's mixed really well. Like the songs lead into each other really well. The atmosphere it builds is distinct from Radiohead's discography, but also in line with it. Feels fitting with it, and the songs are good. Obviously, I mentioned that the songs on it are really good. And yeah, the only reason it's not an S is because, well, first of all, I just don't like it as much as Kid A. I don't think it hits the same highs as Kid A. And secondly, it's again a very subjective type of ranking here. You know, S tier is like, I personally really love this album. So I don't personally really love In Rainbows. I think it's a really good album, and I would definitely listen to it again in the future. I just am not like chomping at the bit to always re-listen to it. So that's kind of what's keeping it from S tier. Next album is House Party by Keaton Henson. So I have an interesting relationship with Keaton Henson. So I discovered him. What year would have that been? 2020? Around then, because obviously we all know what happened in 2020. And I just finished playing Death Stranding, and I came across a band that was featured in the soundtrack called Low Roar. And I think it was like Spotify recommended Keaton Henson because he was similar, or like Keaton Henson was on a like compilation or playlist that included Low Roar or something along those lines. And I stumbled across his music, and I really liked how singer-songwriter it was, and a lot of the music, I mean, it had good production, but a lot of it, you know, really focused heavily around you know, kind of guitar or a piano or things along those natures, or the atmosphere itself was very dream-like, almost kind of like a memory, so to speak. And this album, and I really fell in love with that version of Keaton Henson. And I understand that the albums that I really liked, like Monument, which is one of my favorite albums of his, and just in general, was during, a lot of these were during like rough moments of his life. You know, he himself in one of his songs talks about how he uses pain as his, you know, as his muse, you know, as his reason for creating the art that he does. And this album, I believe, I'm not going to assume anything, but it comes off more as a musician making an album because they have music they wanted to make, and not someone creating an album out of the pure emotional energy that they need to put out and get down into music or into words. And so that term means that the production on this is more traditional. It sounds more of like a full band is playing. I'm sure. I mean, I think Keaton Henson is a solo artist, so I assume it's just him playing the instruments and then putting those all together, which is impressive. But it kind of destroys the kind of same image or kind of atmosphere that I was really loving about Keaton Henson, of this kind of this idea of this solo artist who is so turmoiled or is so filled with emotion that he needs to put it out into whatever format he has, which is whether the piano or the guitar or something like, you know, these memories that are clouding his mind that he needs to put into song and put into an album. Like he needs to get it out, as opposed to this one, which feels more like a traditional album. And I just, it's not bad. It's actually pretty well made. You know, a lot of the songs on it are pretty good. You know, they're catchy. It's a little more poppy compared to his other stuff. But it's hard for me to personally say that it really deserves to be. I think objectively it's like a B tier. It's pretty solid. It's got a lot of good songs. But me personally, it's hard for me to enjoy it because I miss kind of that old atmosphere that his songs had. Now, that doesn't mean that I want him to be in emotional turmoil constantly, but, I do wish that he made music like that still. And there's like only a handful of songs on this album that still kind of keep that old Keaton Henson atmosphere. And to me, that's really disappointing. I felt like it was really unique, at least for me personally, because, I didn't listen to a whole lot of new music before 2020 COVID, when I started to actually listen to a lot more music, and even then, like a little bit afterwards. But Keaton Henson was kind of the first one I found of that genre, so to speak, and I am really sad to kind of see it go for him, because I really enjoyed his take on that and his expression of himself. So yeah, but it's still a B tier. It's still pretty solid. Next is New Flesh by Priest, and there it is. Kind of a dark album cover, but this is a group. I'm not sure how big the group is. I think the implication is it's like three people, but they're an electronic synthy, kind of dark synthy band that a big focus is, it's dark synth, futuristic. It's got a big focus on like machinery and kind of the merging of humanity. It's cyberpunky, so to speak. It's not a video game OST or anything, but it's cyberpunky. That's kind of a big thing with dark synth as a genre. But it's, these guys sing a lot. There's a lot of obviously, because it's synthy, and it's kind of a big emphasis on machines and stuff like that. A lot of it. There's a lot of wow, what's the word I'm thinking? Autotune. Yeah. There's a lot of like autotune on voices, or like voice modulation / like voice filters. There is more traditional singing as well, or I guess traditional non-filtered singing, so to speak. But it's pretty good. It's a unique style, at least. I'm sure there are definitely a ton of bands that do this same level of style. You kind of have that with every genre, right? But at least for me, it felt pretty distinct. And I felt it kind of felt a little similar to the album I listened to last year, Electric Callboy, I believe is what it was, or something along those lines. But in this instance, it didn't have any like heavy rock elements to it. So it kind of kept its own style. Or the singing as well was pretty similar to. Oh man, I need to check on my old albums, because because some of those felt really similar to this, or this felt like it took like inspiration from, even though they're probably convergent evolution, where it's just like they just kind of both happen to stumble across this. But it's a pretty solid. There's some songs that are like pretty catchy. Obviously it's synthy, so it's not like going to be like crazy. I guess like you're not gonna hear like live guitar or anything, but it's pretty solid. If you really like synths and you are okay with kind of more, not goofy, but like out there lyricism, I guess more fantastical lyricism, if that makes sense. Like, it's not really going to be talking about real shit, but it's going to be talking about, it's going to still have themes, like theming of real shit, but it's going to be under the stuff of like machines and etc. etc. So it's a solid album. I'm not going to say it blew me away. It's not like as solid as like these three up here, and certainly no S tier, but I'd say if you're interested in dark synth, or just kind of the more I guess band takes on dark synth, because a lot of dark synth tends to just be either like instrumentation / dubsteppy, and so more like samples instead of like pure singing. But if you're more interested in that, then I'd say they wouldn't hurt to check out. Again, this is New Flesh by Priest. When did it release? I'm thinking about 2017, so it's a pretty modern one. Makes sense. The genre itself feels pretty modern. Yeah. Next is 200% Electronica by E-Spirit, Japanese or Chinese characters, and George Clanton, a collab album, I believe. So this is vaporwavy. It's I think there's some slight singing on it, but its main focus is to be vaporwave. And you know what? It does a great job at it. It is an awesome vibe throughout the entire album. It's hard to say that they don't run together, because that's kind of it's not the point of vaporwave, right? But it's kind of one of the side effects of vaporwave in that the songs kind of run together. But that's also kind of the goal of the album. It's trying to be. It's not trying to be something you focus on like Her Loss or like Alternative Trap by Lucky. You know, it's trying to be something that you throw on and you just kind of vibe. You just kind of exist in this dream realm that it paints in your mind and your feelings. And you know what? That's pretty awesome. I really enjoyed 200% Electronica, and I think that if I'm ever, and I already know it's the first album I'm going to go to if I want that atmosphere. You know, if I want to experience that, well, boom, that's the first thing I'm going to be doing. So, really good album. Next is Mother Earth's Plantasia. Wait, is it? Yeah, Mother Earth's Plantasia. This is not my cup of tea. I so want to put it in D because it's like kind of electronica, but it's just so weird. I think the point of it is to be music for plants. Let me actually look it up. Mother Earth's Plantasia. So it's an electronic album, obviously, by Mort Garson, Mort Garson. But it's really weird. It's the music's kind of just really simple, kind of beeps and stuff. It's not very involved production, and it's just kind of okay. 1976. It's very short, but it seems like the point of the album, quote unquote, is for you to play to plants. You know, like how people play like Beethoven for like pregnant women bellies, or like there's people sometimes play like music for dogs or something. It's kind of that for plants, and the album quote says that on the cover, you know, music for plants and for those who love them. But it's I guess I don't have a green thumb. I don't own any plants actually. And I wouldn't necessarily say I love plants. You know, I think I like them as much as the next guy. So on both accounts, I am definitionally not made for this album. And so that's where it goes, okay? It's not getting anything higher from me, and I'm actually being quite kind here, only putting it in not my cup of tea, because I just really do not like it at all. Thankfully, it's short. That's its only upside. Next is Amaryllis by Shinedown. And now Shinedown, I have a pretty nostalgic history with. I haven't listened to like a ton of their music, believe it or not. I don't know why you wouldn't believe it, but I haven't listened to a ton of their music. Sound of Madness was their first album. Was one of the first CDs I ever owned. So, and I listened to the hell out of it. So I really like Shinedown's music. Like obviously, I like their music. I like their lead singer's voice, and I like how his voice sounds. He's a really talented singer, but I also think it mixes really well with their instrumentation, especially when you get like those really fast songs and the singer is just belting it out. It hits. He is very talented, and I think they work really well with his voice. Amaryllis is the same case. It's a really solid album. A lot of good songs on it. It's really hard to hate any of them, really. Now, not saying that there aren't skips, but, you know, like, it's just a really solid listen through, and I think part of that is I'm biased because I just really enjoy Shinedown's music style, and maybe this means I'll listen to more of them, because, again, I quite enjoy them. So, I mean, if you are already a Shinedown fan, you've probably already listened to Amaryllis. But if you are kind of iffy on them, or if you kind of, you know, maybe you're like me, where you've heard of Shinedown and you've heard some of their songs, or maybe an album of theirs, but haven't listened to like a ton of them, I'd recommend Amaryllis. It's pretty good. I quite enjoyed my time with it, and I think it's really good, which is why I put it in A tier. And it's also like like you look at these and like Clockwork by Queens of the Stone Age was just kind of mixed poorly, or like it was, the album format was mixed poorly. Untitled Unmastered is literally just like an EP. You know, this is a full production album, and you know what? It's really good. Next is In the Aeroplane Over the Sea by Neutral Milk Hotel. I actually have a funny history with this album. This album cover, I did not know this was an album cover until like 4 years ago, because I played a lot of Gary's Mod as a kid, and there was this one guy who had this as his like profile picture, his like gaming profile picture. And so I always associated this, I always thought it was just like some art as a kid, and I always associated it with this guy in my mind because I played that a lot, and I always thought he was like really cool as a kid. And so when I first learned this was an album cover, I was like, what? I was like so disappointed. But then and then I never actually listened to In the Aeroplane Over the Sea for so long. Like, I knew the album existed, and I knew people really liked it. People had it on like their top 10 rankings all the time, but I never really actually like sat down and listened to the album. And then when I did, I quite enjoyed it. I don't think it's S tier, and maybe I'm just biased, but not biased, but maybe I'm just like, maybe I'm stupid, but I quite liked also I think the guitar is really nice. It's such a good kind of comfy album, like it feels homemade. It feels, I guess, homemade is what I said, but it feels homemade. It feels very local. The song content is very, kind of late 90s, early 2000s, kind of that punky content that you expect from songs. Singer-songwriter, of course, and then it has so many bangers. Two-Headed Boy, In the Aeroplane Over the Sea. Oh man, like it's a really well-made album. And I don't listen to it on repeat enough, but I do listen to it quite a lot compared to most of these in this ranking. Borderline, it might even be, is it S tier? That's kind of how I'm thinking, because I have listened to it a lot since I first listened to it, but a lot of that is like the same few songs, like In the Airplane Over the Sea and Two-Headed Boy. Those two are my favorites. But I'm gonna keep it an A for now, just because it is a very solid. I thought they were like Irish when I first listened to it. Did anybody else think Neutral Milk Hotel was like Irish when they listened to it? Because I was like, oh, this sounds like Irish / British or whatever. Kind of that Irish accent I felt. But then I looked it up and they're not. They're just American. I think they're like even from like Chicago or something. So I was like so surprised if anyone else thought that. But I'm going to put it in an A for now. Really solid album. If you're looking for kind of a late 90s, early 2000s, if you haven't listened to it already, kind of singer-songwritery, a lot of guitar focus as well, even though it's a full band. But there's a lot of guitar-based songs on it. I totally recommend it. It's peak. Very good album. Next is Themata by Carnivool. So Carnivool is like an Australian-based group. They're kind of prog rock. And my friend initially, I am a Tool fan. I don't think I've ever mentioned that in the previous videos, but I really enjoy the band Tool. And so my friend was like, you should listen to Carnivool. They're very kind of Tool. They're kind of similar to Tool. And I agree. I think they have a pretty similar atmosphere. Not the same atmosphere, but their style of rock / kind of grunge is similar to Tool's, or I guess prog rock is the better descriptor. I also really enjoy the lead singer's vocals. He has a very clean voice, but he doesn't really do dirty. He doesn't do dirty singing at all, and it's this nice atmosphere. And also they work really well with his voice. I think it's hard to like name anything super distinct about them, as like when comparing them to Tool. I just think that if you like Tool and are interested in hearing more Tool-like music, check out Carnivool for sure. Next up is Third Stage by Boston. Well, there you are. I felt nothing towards this album, and the songs that are on it are just kind of okay at best. The songs that I do kind of remember are just kind of okay at best. I'm not a fan of it. I like their other albums a lot more, and I think that this kind of just felt like a whole lot of nothing. I don't remember much about it, even though I just like re-listened to it recently. And it's Boston. I don't know. I wouldn't recommend it. If you've already listened to Boston, you've probably already listened to this album, and maybe you agree or maybe not. But if you haven't listened to Boston, then I would avoid this album if you ever do check them out, which feels really mean, but that's just what it is. The next two are pretty interesting. It's Hunting Lodge by Will and Will by Hunting Lodge, other way around, and then Hole in the Heart by Ramley. These two are ambient, kind of. Maybe that's not the right way to describe it. Let me find out what they're really labeled as, but they're kind of ambient albums. So Will is they're really weird. So one of them is kind of like, is this the one that I'm thinking of? Yeah, so Will by Hunting Lodge it's almost like kind of like a horror ambient album. Like there's a lot of like torturous type of feeling in this. Like I feel like I would hear a lot of these songs in like a horror game, and almost like more of like a Silent Hill type of horror game rather than like, I don't know, Five Nights at Freddy's horror game. Like it's very grimy. It's great at building atmosphere. I have to I enjoyed listening to these albums in terms of like it was a very unique experience. However, I don't necessarily think that either of them is necessarily my cup of tea. Hole in the Heart is not as murderous as Will is, but it's still noise, ambient. Well, actually, now that I'm re-listening to some of these tracks, it's definitely not ambient, but it's more noisy, I guess, but it's doesn't feel as murderous as Will is. But both of these are still very unique albums, and I don't necessarily hate them either. I just definitely think it's not my cup of tea, and I would not listen to them. I would not listen to the songs off them regularly, just because of how unique they are, and they don't really fit in many activities or scenarios that I would like to listen to music in. Next up is Hyperdrama by Justice, and I think this one it has like a few songs on it that are like big hits, like Neverender, which features Tame Impala, and there's a couple more on here. But overall, I thought it was like pretty mid, honestly. A lot of the songs felt like they didn't really go anywhere, or if they did, it wasn't really anywhere like fun or interesting, and so I was kind of disappointed, honestly, because I enjoy I've heard a lot of Justice songs, or like Justice. They're more of a producer than like actual like singers or whatever. But I've heard a lot of Justice songs, and I actually quite enjoy a lot of them. But I think they might be a bit too experimental on some songs for me to really fuck with them that much. And there's going to be another Justice album that appears, and maybe I should just rank that now, because that's kind of in the same vein as this one, where it's just like it's fine. It's not really. If you like electronic and want some more experimental electronic kind of poppy music, I'd check them out. But I personally was not a major fan of either one of these, which is a bit disappointing. But what can you do? Next is Dream Awake by Black Atlas. So Black Atlas is kind of Weeknd-like, where he's kind of in that pop R&B type of vein, and I have to admit, I listened to a lot of Black Atlas this year, and part of that is because while he isn't super creatively diverse compared to, I believe he's part of the same label as The Weeknd, actually, XO. While he's not as creatively diverse, or I guess distinct from who he's clearly inspired by. I still think it's very good music, and it still has enough of himself in it, and he has his own strengths and weaknesses that he brings to the table to make it a very fun experience. And oh my goodness, if you love to sing your songs, his songs are so fucking fun to sing. His voice is very good at just jumping octaves and stuff like that, and it's so fun. Pain and Pleasure, another Black Atlas album. This one has a few good songs as well, but it's not as good as Dream Awake. And there's another album of his that I listened to a while ago called Infinite, and Infinite would be very high, if not S tier, because that's kind of what I'm comparing these albums to. And Pain and Pleasure, again, has some fun songs. Obviously, the titular Pain and Pleasure, Kind of Like It as well, is also fun. And he actually like makes himself feel a little more distinct in these albums, because these are his later albums. This one was his first one, so the inspirations are a lot more obvious here. But by the time he reaches Infinite, he kind of has his own genre he kind of carves out. And then his most recent one here is 7. This one's kind of mid, honestly. It doesn't have a whole lot of tracks that I really cared about. It has some that are fun, I'm not fun, but it has some songs some of the tracks on there that I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. But on the whole, I was actually pretty disappointed. It's also more of an EP anyway, because it's only like 7 songs. It's only like 20 minutes, but still, it was okay. Next was Paradise by Purple Disco Machine. Holy! I never realized how many Purple Disco Machine songs I listened to before I decided to listen to this album, because I realized that they have made a lot of pop songs that I absolutely adore. And this album is a banger. Oh my goodness. It is such a good vibe going through. And there's so many songs on here that are just... there's Substitution. You got... Substitution, you have fucking All My Life. It is like pop club fun music, and I am so down to listen to this album almost any time, because I just love that genre of kind of upbeat, optimistic pop music. It's more clubby, I guess, because it's more electronic focused, and they're more of a producer, so they have almost every song is a feature basically, and it's so fun. I'm not gonna say 80s. You think disco and you think 80s, and it has some, obviously it clearly has some like 80s inspiration, but it's not like, I wouldn't say it feels 80s, if that makes sense. I don't know. Maybe that's unfair. It does have 80s inspiration. It's really obvious, but I feel like I don't think of the 80s when I listen to Purple Disco Machine, if that makes sense. Like, they feel modern, and it feels good, and it's a really good album, and I highly recommend it. Next is Stranger Heads Prevail by the Thank You Scientist. So this is another prog rock group, and they're actually a really big band. There's like 7 people in this bitch, and I was very surprised to learn that, because it doesn't really feel like it's that, like, it doesn't, when you hear the music, it doesn't sound like it's that big, but they're really good. I had only heard like a song from them previously when I was just going through like my Discover Weekly, and then my friend was like, you need to listen to this album, and so I was like, okay, I'll listen to this album, and I quite enjoyed it. Again, they don't have any dirty singing, it's just a clean singer, and the instrumentation is obviously part of the allure, because it's a prog rock group. Because I mean that's the draw of prog rock. So you're gonna go there for the instrumentation, but I think the song formats are pretty traditional, like chorus and verse and all that. But it's very good. I quite enjoyed Thank You Scientist. It's not A tier because I don't feel. If I put Carnival in A tier, I should put this in A tier too. I think what's holding its back is I haven't listened to this as many times as I have Carnival as Themata, so I think I just feel a little more partial to Carnival, but they're kind of in the same, they feel similar in my mind. Sort of different styles, this one leans more proggy, this one leans a little more grungy. So the different flavors on the same prog, but they're both pretty solid. Next, we have Decide by DJO. Joe. I'm just going to say Joe. This album's... It has a lot of songs on it that are bangers. There is... And you've probably heard some of them because they're kind of been big on the internet. Change. End of Beginning, I know, has definitely been around. It's the end of or whatever. But the actual album itself, listening through it, it's just fine. I mean, some of the songs are standouts, but I think the ones that aren't like major hits are just kind of mediocre. There's not like a bad song on the album, so it's I won't put it in like C, but it's also just like I don't feel too strongly about it outside of the few songs that I took off of it, and I don't think I'd re-listen to the album again just because I'd rather just listen to the songs, that I like instead of like the full album experience, because there isn't really one, and especially because the songs that are there, I would just kind of tune out and then I'll just forget about it. I don't know. I put it in B because the songs that are good are really good, and also I like his voice. I think his singing voice is really good as well. But I think his actual like production is kind of okay. Like he doesn't really have any complex instrumentation, but like it also on some of the songs it just sounds way too simple, I'd say, for it, as opposed to like almost like a rough draft. And so I'm talking myself down to a C. The songs on it the songs that are good are really good, and his voice is really good, but I think the production is okay and kind of simple in some spots. Next is A Day Without Rain by Enya. I'm just gonna put this in not my cup of tea. Enya makes like atmospheric instrumental music. She has that one song that everyone knows, Only Time. It's Who Can Say What, that song. That's like her biggest one. But overall, I mean, folky kind of. I just wasn't a fan, and I felt like a lot of it was felt like music that you'd like hear at like a British pub thing. I don't know. That feels weird to say because that doesn't really feel accurate. Either way, I just wasn't a fan, and I don't think her music's for me because I don't think the album itself is necessarily formatted poorly. I think the songs were ordered really well, but I think the music content itself was just something that I wasn't really a fan of. So that's all I really have to say about that. Next is Control by SZA. I was recommended this by a coworker, I believe, when I was asking for music recommendations, and I do like the genre that she works in, pop, rap, hip hop in general. But I have to say, it's a good made album. I'm putting it in not my cup of tea because the lyrics and lyric content felt very focused towards obviously female listeners and women. And fun fact, not sure if you know this about me, but I am a straight cis guy. I don't think the lyric content was for me, and I felt very awkward listening to it. It almost felt like I was like listening to something that wasn't made for me, which I guess is kind of the point, right? So I think the album itself is fine. If I actually had to rank it, I'd probably rank it like a B tier because the production's pretty good and all that, and I think her vocal style is pretty interesting. But in terms of like the actual like overall experience of the album, it was certainly not my cup of tea because I'm not a woman. So that's really all I have to say on that front. And then as I guess a weird first, I listened to two kind of country albums this year. The first one was Tiger's Blood by Waxahachie, and the second one was Starting Over by Chris Stapleton. So my experience with country is I've never like hated it. Like I've never like been a abhorrent country hater. I've never been like, oh, I fucking hate country. No, I've never been like that. But yeah, I'll listen to it if like people have had it in the car. And my parents played a decent amount of country as I was growing up. So I mean, I am familiar with the genre quite a bit. But I've never like actually, since I started using Spotify, I never had taken the chance to like properly give any of it a proper listen to. It just kind of was like, oh, I like The Thunder Rolls by Garth Brooks. Or like, oh, I know that song. Luke Bryan. Woo. So this year was the first time I'd actually like given a full proper listen to like some country albums. I'm not familiar with Waxahachie. This was another like coworker recommendation, but it kind of had the same vibe as like Taylor Swift's Folklore, where it was just like, yup. I don't remember where I ranked Taylor Swift's Folklore. I can check. I have the tier list. But, so I ranked it a good old solid... Come on, phone. Don't be slow now. I ranked it a pretty solid... Excuse me. Wow. A tier. Wow. Okay. I guess I didn't... So I ranked it A tier, and this gave me similar vibes to Folklore by Taylor Swift. Much different. Like, obviously, this one's a little more focused on country and more traditional country experiences with probably that. But I kind of had the same vibe, and it was fine. It was a well-made album. It was a pleasant experience. I would never listen to it again, but I think that if you're looking for more country music, I definitely would check it out. And then obviously Starting Over by Chris Stapleton. This one was actually really good. It was definitely more of the kind of traditional country you expect. Like when you imagine country, you either think of pop country or you think of this basically. I was out in the blah, 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 blah. Kind of more singer-songwriter. But my biggest thing with country that kind of stopped me from listening to it a lot was it didn't feel like it felt just like super, like I can imagine country and think of what it sounds like, but it didn't feel like it was something that felt like I needed to listen to kind of feel like I had a proper music variety. But listening to this kind of exposed me to the more idiosyncrasies with country that kind of made me want to explore more of it. Obviously, the voice and the singing is a lot more of a draw. The more baritone voice that a lot of, at least older country singers have, is something that draws me in. And the big focus on like the guitar and that singer-songwriter aesthetic is something that I quite enjoy. So I think this album is very solid and actually got me more interested in listening to more country in the future, which is definitely a W, I'd say, in my book, given that beforehand I was like not feeling too into the thought. So I would definitely recommend checking it out if you're also kind of split on country, or you kind of feel like you want to explore the genre a little bit if you haven't. Yeah. So the next album is A Black Mile to the Surface by Manchester Orchestra. So this is, how do I describe it? I mean, it's just like, it's not like they're like, oh, some complex genre. It's just like, I'm terrible with genres. That's the issue. It's like just like indie rock stuff. The thing is a deep cut. If you've listened, so there is an album I listened to, and I think I ranked it on one of my previous tier lists, was like Atlas 2 or something. The singer of that album has the same voice as Manchester Orchestra. I don't think they're the same singer. I don't think so, but it's this kind of like poppy type of voice. It's like made for pop, I'd say, kind of. And it just, that voice specifically kind of just really turns, it's like, it sounds safe. That's the issue. That's kind of the best way I can describe it, is the voice sounds safe. And I don't really like it. I mean, the instrumentation is fine. Like, it's not like it's terrible or anything, but it's also just like, that voice feels very safe, and a lot of the music with that voice in it kind of turns me away because it doesn't feel very unique, which I know the person listening to this who recommended me this album is probably going to wring my neck when he hears this, but I don't know. I think it's definitely a me thing, and it's hard to rank it objectively outside of that, because when I think about it, my mind is just like, it's safe, and it's like, it's not trying to be more or something. And it's also kind of rude because it's like, obviously the lead singer can't help what their voice sounds like, but I don't know, man. Every time I hear that type of vocal style, I just kind of get tuned out of the song. Next is Doris by Earl Sweatshirt. And now if you remember from one of my previous tier lists, I listened to some rap songs by Earl Sweatshirt, and I was not a fan. I didn't like how all over the place it was in terms of production, in terms of like just content, and I wasn't a fan of just it in general. But one of my friends said, or I guess one of the people who recommended me Earl Sweatshirt said, don't listen to that one, because it's not necessarily one that's approachable or accessible for people. Listen to one of his other albums, and they recommended me Doris, which I believe is like his first or second. It's one of his earlier ones. Let me take a look here. It's his bada boom bada bing. It's his first album. Okay, 2013. Yeah, makes sense. And so I listened to this and I actually quite enjoyed it. I quite like Doris. It's I think it works. I think Earl Sweatshirt. I see the interest in Earl Sweatshirt as an artist now that he's not making. Now that the album I'm not listening to is some like almost like thrown together thing is what it feels like, and this one feels like it has more production value behind it and kind of more focus in terms of like the goal it's trying to convey. So I think it's pretty solid. If you're trying to get into Earl Sweatshirt, if you're the same as me, you heard a lot about him and you heard that a lot of people like him, then I'd say definitely check this album out, because I think it's a better intro to like him as an artist rather than some rap songs. And maybe if you show interest in Earl and you still like what he has to offer, maybe then listen to some rap songs. Maybe you'll have a better appreciation for it than I did. But overall, this is where I'd rank Doris, because it's a pretty solid album. Next is Eternal Take 2 by Lil Uzi Vert. So I am a Lil Uzi fan, or at least I've listened to a lot of his music, and so I'm quite familiar with him as an artist. And there is like maybe 2-3 songs on this album that are good, and then the rest is just like mid. It's repetitive, but in a bad way, not in a good way. It is boring. He doesn't do much different, and the stuff he does do is kind of uninspired. I am not a fan of this album, and I am quite disappointed with what he put out. I also am very disappointed, just backtracking a little bit, when he released Pink Tape. And Pink Tape had a lot of experimental, kind of more rock-centric music on it, and I didn't think it really turned out very well, but I appreciated the attempt. And I had hoped that he would like maybe learn from it and would maybe put some more effort into differentiating it or refining it the next time he took a crack at an album, or next time he took a crack at that type of music. And so I was actually kind of excited for like Eternal Take 2 to be like, okay, maybe he's actually refined some of it. Maybe we'll have a nice mix of rock and rap on this album, and we'll kind of go from there. And nope, he just forgot. He just gave up on it, I guess, or he just whatever. He didn't care, and that's another thing that's kind of a big slap in the face that I did not like, because I like it when artists branch out. I say that as I spent like 10 minutes critiquing House Party by Keaton Henson, but I like it when artists branch out and do new things, and I hate it when they branch out and then they just like. They give up on it, because like there was nothing of that on here, and the stuff that was on there, the more traditional kind of Lil Uzi rapping was not good. It was not. Man, this album was a disappointment all around, and here's hoping he improves with the next one. Next was So Much Fun by Young Thug, which I had never really listened to. I had never really listened to Young Thug before. This one was better, obviously, than Eternal Take 2. I thought his lyricism was really boring on it, but I think everything else was pretty solid. There's only so many times you can hear like basically the same variation of "She Eats Semen" that until it just is like we get it, man. It almost just felt like he was like making the same song like 30 times. There's only 19 songs on it, but it just felt like the same song 19 times, which sounds like an old head critique of rap, or like just someone who doesn't listen to rap type of critique. But in this one, I kind of agree. Like I said, I mean, I think his vocal style is pretty fun. I think the beats are well made, so maybe it more deserves like a B tier. But I think his lyricism was just not all that, to be honest, and so it just kind of led to the album kind of becoming boring, especially by the end point, and the features were kind of the things that was carrying me at a certain point, because I was just like, okay, finally, I don't have to listen to the same few bars, repeated over and over. And again, that sounds super hypocritical because I just said, I spoke earlier how I'm a 21 Savage fan, but, whatever. There's always going to be a little bit of bias to people who do things first in my mind, rather than if they were actually the ones that did it first. But either way, moving on. Next is Sound Awake by Carnival. This one is much more forgettable, I think, than Themata. There's still songs, the style is still there, and there's still songs that I quite enjoy. But it kind of just doesn't stick out in my mind as opposed to Themata. Like, there's songs on Themata that I'm like, oh, I love it. Synapse, I think of instantly, where it's just like, that's kind of a staple. That kind of feels like it represents the album really well, and I kind of know what I'm getting into when I go back into that album. But for Sound Awake, there's not really a standout track, in my opinion. And then there's near the tail end of the album, there's like a 12-minute song and a 10-minute song back to back, which is fine. I mean, I don't mind long songs, but they don't feel like they should. They don't feel deserving of how long they are, really, in comparison to the rest of the album. So I just think it's kind of it's okay. It's a fine album. A B tier, definitely. Like, it's still well made, and I still think it's more interesting or more engaging than the albums in C tier. But I don't think it's necessarily going to be hitting as hard as Themata. So I'd recommend Themata first if you want to check out Carnival. Next is Currents by Tame Impala, and I have to say, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, obviously, this particular album has a lot of standout tracks. I mean, obviously, the one that everyone knows is The Less I Know, The Better. I mean, that's like the track from this album, but the rest of them are pretty good. I think the atmosphere that the album cultivates is pretty good. Or I guess is the atmosphere the album cultivates is pretty fun, I should say. But it doesn't feel like it like ever hits the same high. Again, like it's an album I kind of just think of in passing. I don't really think of it, and it's in B tier because, again, it's still a really well made album. I mean, the production value is crazy, and did you know Tame Impala is only one guy? But I don't really think, in my mind, it really just kind of slides right on by, which is unfortunate. But actually, now that I think about it, I'm gonna move Change up there. Not Change. Is it Decide? I'm gonna move Decide up there by Joe as well, because it kind of has the same. These three albums are kind of similar in my mind in terms of the kind of, they have some tracks that stand out, but then the rest of them kind of just fly by. The next album is Mannequin by Kairos, something like that. This one's pretty interesting. It's a very varied album. Like, the music that is played in it is quite distinct. It goes from like rock to electronic to really like grandiose and epic, which I really appreciate in a lot of albums. I'd put it in B. It's a fun album to listen through. I don't know if I don't have like anything really added from it, but like, I could see myself listening to it again on like a rare occasion, just because I like it when albums cross more than like a few genres over their runtime, just because I enjoy variance quite a bit. Next is Angel Youth by the indie group Vansire. This one's pretty good. It's I'd say it's in B tier. So Vansire, they're this like indie group. They seem to be fairly well known based on about 2.1 million listeners. it's almost a kind of what's the word, nostalgic analog type of vibe. Very not folk, but kind of in a similar vein. It feels like the vibe of the album feels like if like a local band made a collab album or made an album and then like featured a bunch of local artists. That's kind of what it feels like. And I kind of like that atmosphere. There's also a lot of good songs in there, like Angel Youth. What was the other one I was thinking of? Brown Study, I think, or Brown Study. That one's also fun. Lonely Zone. Also a pretty good mix of genres as well, kind of like with Mannequin, although to a much lesser extent, of course. Like there's like there's like one or two more hip hop songs on it with features from that. And then I guess moving on to the other Van Sire album I listened to, the Modern Western World. This one I was less impressed by. It didn't have the same kind of down-to-earth feeling as the other one, and just all the songs kind of started to run together quite a bit. It features a lot of the same artists that were on Angel Youth, but I just think that this one had... I don't know. This one just felt like they didn't really have as strong of a vision for what they wanted out of it, or maybe they did, and that doesn't speak very well, but it doesn't feel like it. And a lot of the songs don't really feel distinct enough to really work together, in my opinion. Next is Epic Loud by the Devin Townsend Project, or by Devin Townsend. This is kind of in a less similar vein to Kairos, but it has it's also a pretty varied album, although it sticks more to one genre, but the genre itself is not something I'm particularly a fan of. It's this really kind of like grandiose rock opera kind of atmosphere, and I'm just not really down to clown with that a whole lot, and so a lot of the songs kind of went in one ear and out the other. I mean, it's not like I didn't like any of them. I liked a few of them off there, but I think the overall genre itself just kind of turned me away, and which is weird because I usually enjoy stuff like this, so I just think the songs themselves weren't particularly anything to write home about. Next is Parachutes by Coldplay. This one's a pretty solid album. I mean, Coldplay is obviously a big group for a reason, not just because they have a lot of hits. I mean, this album was pretty good. It has a lot of good songs on it. I just don't think any of what it did really stood out too terribly much for me personally. So I'm just gonna put it in B, and there's not much else I can really say about it. Next is Humanistic by Abandoned Pools. This, I swear I have heard this group before. If not, then there was a lot of songs on this album that sounded very familiar. Now, I don't know if that speaks to maybe I have heard them before, and I just rediscovered them, or if they don't sound super original. Either way, though, I think this album is really solid. A lot of the songs are really well made. It's mixed very well, and they lead into each other. Like, it's not like Clockwork where it just bounces around everywhere. Actually, I'm gonna put that in A while I'm thinking about it. It's not like Clockwork where it like bounces around everywhere. It's actually a consistent listen through, and the instrumentation is really well, as well as the singer. The instrumentation is really good, as well as the main singer as well. His voice is pretty talented, and it's got a lot of songs in there that are pretty catchy and kind of anthemic that you'll really want to return back to, especially the ending track Florissine, I think is how you pronounce it. That's a banger. It's real good. We're down to our last four here, and the next is Forever Sometimes by Dear Boy. This is kind of in the similar vein to Humanistic by Abandoned Pools. However, I think it's where it's also kind of in the same vein as like kind of rocky and all that, and it's I think it's even better, honestly. It has this kind of like small town vibe to it, because I think it's probably because Dear Boy themselves is not a very big artist compared to Abandoned Pools, even though neither of them are like massive artists in and of themselves. But Dear Boy is definitely a smaller artist, and I really like the vibe of kind of this like hometown album type of feel that this album kind of elicits from the listener. And plus, a lot of the songs are really good as well. Forever Sometimes, the titular track, is really fun, and just listening through it, it's a solid experience, and it'll keep you invested the whole way through. Next, we have an EP, As If by Small Talk. This is these three back-to-back kind of give the same vibe. Not the same vibe explicitly, but like all of them are not particularly ginormous artists, and this one's even smaller than Human Pools and Dear Boy, but they all feel like very like passion project, homemade by the band, like it's their first start, and I really appreciate that. And also, this one in particular has a lot of is very fun because it's like you can hear the liveness in it. Like you can hear how these songs were probably played in bars and stuff before they were put onto this EP, and I really appreciate that because it it's almost like it gives like an underdog type of aesthetic. I mean, the songs themselves are good. Like I'm not saying that they're bad. Like I'm not saying specifically that them being an underdog makes their songs better. I'm just saying that it adds an aspect to it because their songs are still good. It's just the underdog part improves it even more in my book, just because I really enjoy listening to smaller artists a lot of the time, even though big ones are, they have good songs. I mean, Her Loss is on here in the A tier as well. I just really enjoy that type of atmosphere as well. And also the music is good in all of these. Final two, we have Pluto x Baby Pluto by Future and Lil Uzi Vert. This one's fine. It's got a lot of good tracks on it, but it also has like just a lot of mid to bad, and the album itself is pretty long. So yeah, hour 22 minutes. So you're really banking on having good songs to carry you through it, and it doesn't really have it. I still think the songs it does have are good to put it up into B, but then there's a lot of stuff where it's just like and you really want to kind of skip it just to get it over with and get through it. So that really detracts from it. I'd still say B, just because there's plenty of tracks on here that are strong enough, and also I just think Future and Lil Uzi Vert work really well together in terms of like their vocal styles and all that. And plus some of the beats are pretty good. So it's not a terrible album, but it's certainly not a very strong one. And then last but not least, we have Life of a Don by Don Toliver. It's not in C tier. I was just placing it on the tier list. So this was my first time listening to Don Toliver, or I think that's how you pronounce it. I like his production style. I'm not sure if that's him who does it. I would assume it is, but I like his production style quite a bit. It's kind of this, like you listen to Swingin' on Westheimer, and it's just like, kind of like, I can't think of the word, but atmospheric is kind of the one I'm leaning towards. I mean, R&B is I guess another way you could say it, but it's not really explicitly the same. But I really like his production style, and I think his voice is pretty nice. I just think that this album, a lot of the songs kind of run together, which can hold it back, and they kind of start to bleed into each other, and it kind of makes the album feel a little more mushy than some other clear-cut kind of albums. But other than that, I think it's a pretty solid lineup of tracks, and I think the production value, as mentioned, is good, and Don Toliver's voice works really well on them. I just think overall I probably would want to hear more unique stuff out of it if I wanted to place it any higher. And well, with that being said, that's the tier list. I mean, this year overall, I know I kind of fumbled through a lot of these explanations, but that's just because this year, to be entirely honest, not a lot of these albums really stood out to me, to be honest. Like when I make these tier lists, like when I made 2023s and 2024s, for a ton of those albums, I could instantly name kind of the feelings I had off the top. A lot of them were recorded almost basically in one take. I mean, basically in one shot, in one go. I mean, I did pause through them and stuff like that, which you didn't notice because, well, unless you did through the cuts. But for this one, a lot of these albums, I had to go back and re-listen to them just to kind of get my thoughts and bearings and to accurately be able to rank them. And it kind of makes this year, like when I look at a bunch of these albums, when I look at some of the albums on my previous tier list, I feel an instant feeling. It's like memory. It's like, oh, I know how I felt about that album. But for this one, it's like I look at, I don't know, Great Soul by Great Soul, and I was pretty curious like who they are, but as in terms of the actual album, like the EP itself, I didn't really feel too strongly one way or the other. I kind of was just like, it's pretty good. It's B tier. It's a pretty solid lineup of tracks, and that kind of was a bit disappointing for this year. I mean, there was a few standouts, obviously. In the Airplane Over the Sea, Her Loss, Places was really good. Cassiopeia album. And then some of it was obviously, it's like, oh, I hate Eternal at Take Two. It's so disappointing. Marble was really bad, too long of an intro song, stuff like that, you know. But then you get to something like Tiger's Blood by Waxahachie, and it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's pretty well made, but not much to really say about it otherwise. But thank you all for listening, and I would love to see your guys' responses to some of these in the comments down below. Let me. But yeah, that's it. So see ya.